Call this meeting to order. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. See none. Approval amendments of meeting agenda. Be it resolved that council approve the agenda of the committee of the whole meeting dated December 7th, 2021 as presented or amended. A mover and seconder. Matthew and Doug. Is okay, for discussion. All in favor? Okay. Looks like a lag on the screen there for some reason. Approval of the minutes. Be it resolved that council approve the following minutes as presented. Special meeting of council November the 23rd, 2021. Regular meeting of council November the 23rd, 2021. Mover and a seconder, please. Pat and Bill. Discussion on the matter, on the meetings? All in favor? Carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Inquiries, member to general public, we have none. Delegations, we have none. Business arising from delegations and presentation, also none. Staff committee reports, we have none at this point. Items for council direction. 10.1, the date of the January committee of the whole meeting. As it stands, it falls on January the 4th. Now, our staff will be coming back from Christmas break on the 3rd, so it's a bit short. The thought was to move it to the 11th for our committee of the whole meeting and the 18th for our general meeting. Does anybody have any other suggestions or comments? So is everybody okay with doing that? Get a show of hands or a nod or something? Okay. Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing request for the town of Cobalt to sign as a guarantor for the DSAB RE, the Fraser building. I believe John Hodgson is going to speak to that issue since he's been dealing with them all along. John, are you there?
I sure am. Thank you very much.
Okay, you carry this one.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I was hoping we put this item on the agenda last Thursday in the hopes that the province would get back to us with information that we requested on this particular matter, and that has not happened yet. Not sure why. It's about 2 weeks now since we put in the request, such as the actual term left on this particular guarantee that was signed, and now is going to be transferred between COTEM and over to DSAB. And we asked what would be the payout of this guarantee or this loan if it was called for in today's date. So they were going to look up this and a couple other things, such as the pertinent paperwork that happened back when this was first put in. So we haven't heard back, but I think it's important that the matter be dealt with fairly quickly, and so I think it will be put on the agenda for the regular council meeting in 2 weeks. I'm quite confident that the material will be back and we can provide a more informed decision. But if you take a look at the terms of the actual 1.517 million guarantee, you'll see that it was originally through the town with COTEM, and now it's over to DSAB, as DSAB is in the process of formally taking over from COTEM. So I'm sure if there are any questions on the matter, I'll try my best to answer them.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. John, you're recommending that we hold down or remove that one section F, I believe.
What I would be recommending, especially if it had all the information I was hoping to get this week, would be that council be given the opportunity to formally adopt this agreement. And if the agreement is not adopted, then in my opinion, a sensible approach would be that since this guarantee deals with the requiring affordable housing be provided under this program, I'm recommending that if that's the wish, if the agreement is turned down, that council consider passing a resolution formalizing their intent to, yes, provide affordable housing until the end of the term at least.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah. Could you just explain it a bit more to me, John? I've never seen one of those before. So what we're doing is guaranteeing that we're going to support DSAB and have DSAB provide that affordable housing? Is that what this is about?
Thank you for that question. But originally, when this was assigned, because there was a significant cash inflow to pay for the actual renovations to the Fraser in that particular amount, they demanded and received a signed copy saying that the town of Cobalt would guarantee the that cash amount so long as all of the requirements that went with providing affordable housing were maintained. If you were to ask me, would I recommend having council sign such a document back then? I'm not sure, I can't speak for that. But my recommendation at this time, that council consider it, because this is a request from the province, but have the ability to vote on it.
Clear, Pat. Doug?
John, when this agreement was entered into, wasn't COTEM also a partner in the project and guaranteeing some of the capital cost?
Thank you, Councilor Wilcox. I believe that one of the reasons why the town was put in a position to sign that loan guarantee was that COTEM did not have the ability to guarantee any capital costs.
Great. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Uh, 10.3, Brandon Willett request to purchase vacant municipal lot adjacent to 58 Jameson Street. You have some information there in your package, a letter from Mr. Willett and some pictures showing the property. Now, Dave, could you, do we have any use for that property? Is it, that's the one back here, yeah?
No.
You've had an opportunity to look at it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Angela.
I noticed in
Angela?
the photo, I noticed in the photos that there are stairs coming down in the back of the property adjacent to the one that's going to be sold, or that is proposed to be sold. Is that going to landlock that piece of property? Is that going to cause an issue? Because they have stairs coming down there now where they have access to them from the lot that you were proposing to sell.
I'm not sure. We could look into that a little further, I guess.
Steve, Councillor Edson, this photo here is from 2009. Since this photo was taken, those stairs have been removed. They're no longer there. So it's all grown in that area as well, and no movement of obtaining that into that property at this time.
Okay, and do we not have to put a notice out to the other residents in the area before we go ahead with something like this?
Yes, we do. We will follow the proper criteria. It's got to be put up for a surplus, and anyone else who wants to bid on it are going to have that opportunity, I would believe.
But do we not notify the adjacent property owners so that if they have any issues, they can bring them forward?
I'm not sure what the criteria is if we have to go that far, but we will look into it, definitely.
Okay,
John, would you have an answer for that question? Steve, do you?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, there is no requirement. There used to be under the Planning Act to have a requirement for that, but the Planning Act has changed. And as the planner informed us, there is no requirement that the option be given to the neighboring properties to actually make an offer on it. There is a requirement to dispose the property as per our procedural bylaw, but that particular requirement is gone.
I'm not asking if they can have an opportunity to buy it. I'm asking, do we notify them so if they have any issues with it being sold, i.e. it's going to cause an issue for access or anything, that they have a chance to address that, is what I'm asking.
If that is a request for direction, I can tell you that there is no requirement to send in the neighbors that. And if Councillor Adshead wishes the staff to notify them, there is a notification that can go out. However, well, unless they have real interesting information to come forward, however, they would have to show a particular use or need or entitlement to access that property. They couldn't supersede the process of putting it up for sale. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, but I think we need to be aware of any issues that we may be causing for our existing residents by selling something. That's all. I think it's only a courtesy.
Okay. Go ahead, Doug.
Just wondering if that particular property would have any foreseeable potential to be sold as a residential lot for another house.
Dave, would you have an answer?
There's no water service or no sewer service to that lot.
It's not a service lot, okay.
It's a vacant lot. There was an old garage on there before. That's all it ended up getting torn down. And there's no use for us.
Is that, go ahead, Doug.
No, not particularly. Water and sewer can be put into pretty much any lot. I'm just wondering as to its size and would it qualify as a residential property? Do we want to sell vacant lots to adjacent houses and reduce whatever might be available in the town for development? Or, do we want to try and promote development?
Well, I think this selling to this person would be twofold, because I think right now they're having a hard time parking their vehicles off-road, and they have been using that spot for parking. And that's basically what his intent would be, to use it as parking and a yard. He's basically landlocked with the house he has, so. 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I guess.
By landlocked, you mean he has no other room for a driveway or parking space or anything?
No. Pat?
And I would think too, when we do release it for sale, if there was someone that was actually interested in paying to put in the services and putting a house there, then they will have the right to bid on the property too at that point. So we're not ruling that out. It's just we're responding to a request to have that property freed up so that they would like to buy it, but it still could, anyone could jump in at that point. So we're not cutting anyone out. But I do agree that if there's nowhere to park, you've got to get your lot bigger. And that is it's a bad road back there. It's just too narrow to try and park along.
Go ahead, Doug.
And I have no problem with those comments. Certainly parking is always at a premium for a number of lots in Cobalt. But on the other hand, I kind of find we almost seem to have a lack of direction in how we want to develop whatever properties might be available in the town. And we are in the middle of doing our official plan. So I'm wondering if this is the appropriate time to approve that, or do we wait until we approve our official plan and hopefully get a chance to address what we want to do with properties that are available for sale. There are a number of properties in town that are owned by other individuals that do not seem to have any likelihood for development, and that could be a drawback.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, well, everybody's had a chance to speak to it. Okay. No more comments, nothing? 10.4, David Pinckney proposal to rent municipal space. Mr. Pinckney is looking at renting our vacant office downstairs. You've got your proposal in front of you. Everybody had an opportunity to read it. Comments? Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I read it, and I think he's done his homework. Proposals are not out of line. And I support business in town, we need that. The only thing I have a problem with is, we have to get our act together, because first of all, we talked about installing a gym there, and then there was always the issue about maybe it's gonna take over the food bank in case we don't know what's gonna happen at the other end. So we got a couple of things hanging over our heads.
Yeah.
before we can make this decision. But I do support business, and I think it's a good thing that he's come forward and he's making his intentions quite clear to us.
Mhm.
But we have to get our act together. There's still people asking me about if we're gonna have a gym down there, and I haven't heard anything about the building, the fire museum, whether that's gonna go ahead. So there's always that chance that that thing collapses and we have no place to put our food bank.
Absolutely. Angela?
I'm still stuck on trying to keep that open to put our gym in there. It's accessible. It'll open the gym up to more than just the able-bodied people. And it's not going to interfere with anybody's quality of life, which I still think the other proposed option might. I'm not 100% convinced it won't. So I agree with Bill in theory. We need to get our act together and decide exactly what we want to do with it. Because if we're going to put the money into that to develop the space for a business, why wouldn't we develop the space for something our community has been asking for since we took office?
Because
Just my
we've had a
thoughts.
hard time finding somebody to do what we have to get done, and it's all carpenter work and construction work. And right now, you can't steal a carpenter, fortunately. And I think we're working very diligently at getting our act together. It's just we're having a hard time moving forward because of lack of professional people to do our job.
Well, and we're gonna have the same problem.
We can't even get an engineer to come and look at a building right now, so.
Okay, but we're gonna have the same problem. But we're
Go
gonna
ahead.
have the same problem if we have to do the construction on it for a business to go into it. So it's
Yep.
6 of one, half a dozen of another.
Yep.
So I agree, we need to decide exactly what we want to do and where we want to go before we make any decisions on the space.
Okay. No problem. Any other comments? Okay, we'll get back to you, Dave, whenever we get around to it. We're going to, there's a considerable amount of work that has to be done in there anyways. So
Thank you.
it'll take a little bit of time yet, so. Okay, and thank you for your patience.
If I can help in any way at all, let me know.
Yeah, we will. Okay. Thanks again for putting your proposal in, your interest in starting a business. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, 10.5, Aqua's annual capital letter and major maintenance 5-year plan. Now, I want to make it clear, this is not a proposal for service. This is budgeted items that we have to look at in the next, in the coming year, and they would be budget items. Victor, are you ready to go?
So as part of your drinking water quality management system, your plan, the town of Cobalt's plan for the water, we have to put together kind of it's not necessarily a wish list. It's actually a list of materials that you need or equipment that you'll need or work that has to get done on an annual basis. This isn't something that Ontario Clean Water does so that you can say, okay, go ahead and do it. This is stuff that can be done by the town or has been done by the town, but we're identifying it in a 5-year plan. When you look at the plan, things that need to get done annually are there. You can actually try to budget or as part of your budgetary budget for those items year to year. We probably don't have half the stuff that'll break down, but we can't forecast what's gonna happen in 2 years with a pump or with a valve or whatever else. So we try to look at the items that you need, whether it's on the shelf or need to, we're having issues with now, or there is a serious concern about a breakdown in the future. Some of the items that are on the list this year are items that Dave and I actually talked about. Some of it being maintenance that you spend all the time, so you should be aware of the fact that you're spending that money every year anyways, as well as items that if you have a catastrophic failure on a specific piece of equipment, like a chlorine analyzer that's there, you cannot analyze that water, you will be on a boil water until that piece of equipment comes in. Some of these pieces of equipment, due to the fact that we're in COVID right now, we're looking at what used to come in 4 weeks or 5 weeks is now 12 to 16 weeks. And all the municipalities around us right now are in the same sort of boat where some of them have some sitting on a shelf to make sure that we have that availability to be able to go in and say, okay, you can swap it out and there's no sort of break in service as well. So some of those items on there, and you can ask questions about them if you'd like, but a lot of the items on there is specifically to that purpose. You have critical control points in your water plant that sort of are identified through your plan as well as the ministry. And any breakdown within those areas or those critical control points is definitely a catastrophic failure. So as we go down through here, we look at valves, we look at feed lines for chemical pumps, we look at the maintenance to your chlorine system, maintenance to your UV system. Those are annual stuff that needs to get done. And it gets done every year. Just that you need to start identifying it in your 5-year plan as you move forward. Like I said, in your plan as well, from year to year, there's some stuff that'll come up that next year will be on the list, maybe for every second year. As you look at the plan, we do the best we can to try to identify what needs to get done this year, what can be done next year, this year being 2022, each subsequent years. I've also identified the Cobalt wetlands in there, and I'm, through identifying the director's order, identifying the maintenance that has to get down there. There's some big items on there as well, but there's some of these things that were identified quite a few years ago, still haven't gotten fixed. So I've identified these based on that original officer's order sitting right now. That is on the docket, unless they take that off the docket with the appeal process. But you guys will have to start looking at some of these costs this year, and possibly in 2022. So being realistic in some of this stuff, if there's any questions about it, like time to ask, because everything in red that on your one form is critical, and we should definitely look at this for 2022. As you can see, there's a medium priority down below, it's yellow, and your low priorities where you can move on and push through, but you need to identify as you move forward from year to year what you need to start to budget on your water and wastewater side. I don't have anything in here on your distribution system and your collection, except for consultation with Dave on some valves, because there's some need for valves in your system where you don't have spares. You can exercise the valves every year for 25 years, and they seem to open and close. But when you have a break, you try to isolate that break. You can't. You've closed 37 valves in the distribution system, and there's no water stopping. And that's when you realize that. So this is something we send out every year as per your drinking water quality management system. For your water plant, we identify the sewage on the same token, but on the water side. So these need to be definitely looked at with a serious eye. Identify what we need, what your plan needs is actually, obviously not tonight, but some kind of decision based on based on your 5-year plan and what you decide on what you want to done in 2022, and what you want to defer to 2023, that plan needs that answer. And, when we get audited, or not we, as Town of Cobalt gets a third-party auditor comes in, to keep your permit and license, you need to pass that plan. And year after year, if we're not following through with the plan, or Town of Cobalt's not following through with the plan, then they have the right to pull your license. Not, they won't approve your license and permit. And at that point in time, I'm not sure what they do, or you'll get a non-conformance. There's a major and a minor non-conformance of your plan, and that's one of them. So this is, this is something that you have to look at, definitely delve into, take a look. So, like I said, all these items were in consultation with Dave, both on the water and wastewater side. Felt that this is the best list right now. I know that you've gotten some work done at the water plant. You assume that it's brand new there, but it's not. There's still a lot of aging equipment. You have a scenario with CL17s. You got three. There's three there. Depending on the scenario, one is put into place. You can't take one out of place to spare another one because it's there for a specific reason. And you fall out of your current license when you do that. So to have some of these pieces of equipment a spare on the side to give you that time to reorder another spare down the road, those items are critical. It's just, and not to push any kind of legal part of it, but this is where council has to make a real decision on finances, because as we move forward with your standard of care, we know that ultimately the council making decisions at this level, and your standard of care, it's critical when ministry comes in and you've had a boil water pump for 12 or 14 weeks due to putting some of this equipment in place, especially if it's year after year, haven't identified it in the master plan. So it's very important that you make those decisions. And whatever those decisions are, it just needs to be laid back in the plan. That's the important thing. Okay. So I can go through item by item if you'd like. Like I said, we've got your license renewals in there for next year, the external audits. Those are third-party audits. Those, we have nothing to do with a third party that comes in. They were the two companies, SAI Global and what's the second company? They were identified by the ministry as the two companies that actually do the audits. And you choose one at that point in time. So they are your auditor. HMI on the list is something that it's a human machine interface. And if you don't have that, you don't operate. You operate everything manually. So we don't have any spares. That crashes. It's basically a touch screen interface to build or to operate the system. If you don't have that in place, there's not one inside. You're ordering that, and those type of pieces could be 16 to 20 weeks away. It's not something that people just stop. So you have nothing in place right now to back that up. So
if you don't have an HMI, you don't make water. Because we can't do anything manually.
Okay, now your HMI that's your computer system, obviously.
So it's the actual interface that
Screen?
actually you plug everything in and it
Okay.
shows what the pumps are doing. You can shut the system off. You can manually turn some stuff on. That crashes. There's nothing.
Okay, now is that like similar to a cell phone or a computer? Does it get outdated so quickly that you can't keep up?
Well,
with it?
no, it's not that it gets outdated, because once it's in the system and working there, outside any catastrophe, that, a power surge or anything that could possibly load, it's a piece of, it's a laptop, it's whatever. So they have a lifespan. And without something as critical as that, I'm not saying there's not one on a shelf somewhere, it's to find it, and something that'll match that system. The chlorine analyzer, very, very important that's fair coring now. Like I said, there's 3 in the system right now. One of them dies, then again, you don't know what your chlorine residual is going out the door. So as Reg 170 tells us, we've got to have a man sit there and take residual every 5 minutes. So not only is it costly, but it's to have a guy sit there because it's identified as an online analyzer. It needs to read every 5 minutes. Same thing with the item below it, the kits, for your hack PM kits, it's just a preventative maintenance kit. As much as when one goes down, if you don't have these kits to do the maintenance on it, then again, you're in the same boat. Ministry says, well, we see a bump in your turbidities off your filters. What did you do? Well, we waited 6 weeks for a preventative maintenance kit. So they delve into that. They have 28 days to complete your inspection. Take all that information back and they ask you 400 questions to that. So they delve in to make sure that it's being operated as intended. Your UV maintenance and your chemical feed chlorination system. Again, that's an annual thing that Dave does, even though it's on the list. Doesn't have to mean that it's off of it. It's just Dave gets it done and you identify that it should be in the budget. You should have that. That's an annual maintenance. Just spare parts for your chemical pumps and feed lines. Most feed lines on most systems are recommended to change them. I don't know when the last time they were actually. So you should have the spare parts for that. On the wetland side, I know those are big items, but like I said, we Aqua, myself, deal with SEI daily on discussions on some of the work that needs to get done. I'm a little bit skeptical on the provincial officer's order, even though it's in a stay right now with the appeal. But I'm worried that there's not going to be much movement on it. So where we talk about effluent flow meters and whatnot, what's there now is not working. And it hasn't worked for many years. And you definitely need to come up with a plan to do that. Discussions with upper management here, even to get some engineering done, one way or the other, to have a shovel-ready project for funding. Right now, we don't even have that shovel-ready project. So funding come out tomorrow, not Cobalt, scrambling, and like we talked about, carpenters and electricians. You just can't call up an engineering company and say, hey, you come down tomorrow, we'll get a proposal, try to get an application. So it's important that we talk about that. Same thing with the berms. The berms are, could be quite extensive, even more than this here, depending on what an engineer talks about, how you can repair those berms and what they do with your provincial office. So those are 2 big items in that order. It needs to get done in a short order, and a plan in place. So right now, not sure where we are with the plan, but definitely we need to sort of keep in mind that those are big numbered items, but you can be forced to do that. 4-bay cleaning. This is something that should be done regularly. It hasn't been done in quite some time. The issue being with the 4-bay is the material that's in there. You just can't grab that and throw it anywhere. You just can't put it in where no one's licensed for it. I have been in talks with the city and with FIPN, Waste Management, and we've come up with kind of a plan in the last date to try to mitigate those issues and have that done on a move forward basis annually, a couple times a year. But the initial clean out of it's going to be quite huge. There's going to be some cost because once it's maintained and done spring and fall, then you'll see that how the operations will run better, as well as keeping that the way it's supposed to be. talk about certifying old mine sites for tailings ponds and stuff like that, but that never came to fruition. They just wouldn't allow that material there, so. So I do have a bit of plan in place. I'm just waiting for some financial numbers to get back to you on how that can happen and move forward with that. It's definitely a criteria that you need to get to move forward. Basically, your raw comes in, goes into a settling pond, and then leaves that, goes into cell one. That settling pond right now makes your raw worse than what it is. So what comes out of the settling pond for an actual sample is worse than what's going to be, because of the fact that it has grid channels, the same thing. We need to move forward and grid channels, so there's a cost to that as well. The samplers, they need annual services. We're going through that. We just had a run of bad samplers go. Those are your composite samplers. Those are the samplers that actually pull for a 24-hour period to get a composite as opposed to a grab. They run about $12,000 to $15,000, and they're not even giving us a date. They're not even telling us. And your director's order right now talks about the composite samplers, so it's not like you can change it for anything else. So there's just a few items that you need to keep on standby in case there's a breakdown, as well as this service. And then we proposed, depending on what happens with your flow meter, one of the things that I am expecting within the application, and it might not be this year, is a UV system for the wetlands. We're seeing in lagoons and sewage plants across Ontario here where they're renewing. Ministries automatically putting in chlorination systems for those. The best way to go about with chlorination systems is to not go with hypochlorine gas, because you have to dechlor. And what has to be sent to the receiving stream is so minute that the fisheries and oceans every year will tickets and fines. So most municipalities are going to UV systems. I think Latchford's proposes to put an UV system in as well for the sewage. So because we don't have an ECA right now, it's working off the director's order. As we move forward, we're going to see some of that stuff that just gets thrown into there, into the regulations changing, as well as pH and temperature. Put that in here. That's one of the things that you're probably going to see as an ongoing pH and temperature control, especially pH. So when we look at the effluent flow meter and how we're going to house that, we should look at install analyzers. That's to minimize maintenance on the system as well as optimize production. There is a lot more items that that should be put forward, but obviously it's moving forward with your 5-year plan. Add it to the 5-year plan.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Bill?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So basically what you're proposing here is a PM schedule.
Yeah, pretty much it is. Just there's some items here that I don't think you have a choice of doing.
Yeah, but that's what I want to ask. Okay, so I worked in the industry that preventive maintenance, did a lot of that. The list here, is it in order of critical component? Like which is?
Well, red on your 5-year plan is critical. So on your
these parts that you're listing here on the list. Okay.
Yep.
Now you're talking about valves. I mean, you're not giving me. You're asking us to make a decision, and there's quite a significant amount of money here. Okay, so you're saying valves. I mean, valves, are they going to fail? How many operating hours? I don't see any of that stuff.
The valves are actually in your distribution system, and it's a request by Dave because he's worried that if he has a breakdown, that you have what you need to do is have a plan, and that valves in the distribution system is actually or even at the water plant, because there's so many different sizes of valves. you put a price in there to say, okay, we need what that can get us for with 1 or 2 valves. You might have 4 or 5 different sizes of valves.
So you talk about a chlorine analyzer, you talk about a computer. Now you're talking about redundancy on the computer, we should have another one ready to go, or?
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so I don't see any operating hours, for example, on this chlorine analyzer. How many hours is this operating? Well, at what point do you get, say, like 500 hours, you got to start thinking about replacing it? You know, I mean, you can't put something in today and expect it to fail tomorrow. I mean, everything's going to fail eventually. But there should be a standard of operating hours. I'd like to know the operating hours on this stuff. Like how long, you know, you come to me and say, here's a schedule that's been operating for 150 hours. They're saying at 200 hours, we need to think about changing it. Can you do that? Or, you know, to make it a
Well,
little
outside
bit
your
more
turbidity
sellable?
meters right now?
I don't know if it's a stupid question, but.
No, it's not a stupid question. You know what, but like anything else, you can go and buy a brand spanking new car and break down on the highway with 14 kilometers on it.
But it shouldn't.
It shouldn't, that's right. But you know what? But we're gonna call a cab and we're gonna call someone who's gonna pick us up. But here, we're talking a little bit more criticality. And what I'm trying to identify is that these things here, if they fail, and we have, I think there's 2 units there that are not young, but probably should have been replaced already. So
But that's what I'm trying to say. Your most critical components should be listed 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the ones that I like to see. These are your critical components. Without these, we're shutting down. We got to boil water and bunch.
So I did that on the 5-year plan. So if you look at the 5-year plan, red is critical, as identified in the 5-year plan. So at the bottom, it'll show you what's critical and what's not critical.
How about redundancy in any of this stuff? You need something in place that if it's going to fail, it's going to back up right away.
That's what we're talking about. And that's what I said, like when it comes to the chlorine analyzer or the HMI, you're not making water. You're sitting there with a van paying overtime 24 hours a day.
And the guy has to take it out and he has to replace it, so it's going to be down for a while.
Well, the replacing of some of these items are minimal. It's, you know, like CL17, outside being an instrumentation technician that goes in and does it, there's a little bit of electrical and stuff like that. But it's a plug and play kind of system. But if you don't have it on the shelf, it's not.
Okay, so how did you vote, the things that are highlighted in red, how did you vote those? Did you just put operating hours on it, or how? You say,
No, it's critical to
Can fail
the
any
operation
time.
now. It's critical to the operation now.
So it
So
doesn't matter how long it's been operating, it's critical.
what I'm saying to you is that I can't give you a 500-hour scenario based on a manufacturer's recommendation. What I'm telling you is that if one fails, it's catastrophic. Right? That's what I'm telling you.
Well,
So
if it's catastrophic, okay, where I'm coming from, there should be another component in place that's redundant. If it fails, there's another one. There's A and there's B, and it's ready to go. You should be able to go to the plant and say, oh, we got one that's failed. We got to replace it. But the other one's running. It's still running. The system's still running.
So you have that with chemical pumps? Right.
Backup is what I'm saying.
You have backup with
in
chemical
place.
pumps, you got a second one on, because that's part of your permit license. That's part of what it tells you you have to have. You just can't put one on. But when it comes to CL17s and turbidity meters, you don't have to have that redundancy sitting on the shelf. Or sitting like ready to just automatically spring over. Because right now with your chemical pumps, if you get an alarm, your alarm sends a man out to check it, but it's already switched over to the second pump and there's no.
That's what I mean.
CL17 or HMI, there's no redundancy. Absolutely none. There's none. With your valves, there's no redundancy. Right now, if a valve fails, you're gonna order a valve, and it could be a valve that's so important to the operation of the plant. So I'm not telling you that I'm suspecting that there's going to be a failure on a CL17 tomorrow. What I'm telling you is that there's 2 in place that have been in place for quite some time.
There's nothing there.
And we have nothing on the shelf. And I think one of the ones that is actually in operation was one we had on the shelf in the past when one failed. So it's been put into place and we've not replaced it. What I'm telling you is that right now with, blame it on COVID, blame it on whoever, right now, where we're ordering this stuff from, it ain't coming in. They're not giving us a date on some of this equipment. They're saying, when we get it, we'll let you know. We're not saying it should be there in 6 months. But what I'm saying is some of this stuff, get you just trouble by not being able to.
That's why I say it should have been designed for redundant.
Yeah, absolutely, but I mean, that's what I'm saying, so once they design it, and put that stuff in there, like I said, your chemical pumps and your water pumps, your raw and your low lift and your high lift, they have that redundancy as well. But those small systems like the CL 17 and the HMI and whatnot, and the maintenance part of it, they don't really, they're hoping you have it there, but there's nothing in the rig, there's nothing there that needs to talk about. So that's why we put these processes in place to say we're helping you out and say, here's what's
Absolutely.
something you should be budgeting, looking at for your water wastewater. And, you know, in consultation with Dave, when we had the talk, remember that the town of Cobalt is the operating authority for the water and wastewater. We're an oversight. So as we look to see what he needs or what they need or where we need it, we try to identify some of those issues. And it's in consultation with my staff as well, on stuff that we get called out to your water plant to fix. So if there's an analyzer that's failed or there's something, we need to get there and fix it. And they're telling me that needs to go on the capital list. So it's not just Dick Legault saying, oh, what do we need now? It's we're talking with the operations. What's critical.
Right now, our CL 17s are obsolete. You can't just get a one rig we have now, you gotta get a new.
So there's no sense of stocking a whole lot of the stuff way in advance then?
Well, I mean,
On the CL 17.
the CL 17, we're going to different hack piece of equipment because hack is pretty much proven out there that.
Okay. And I see where you're coming from too, Bill, but in a perfect world, I guess we could have had that all done, but.
Well, it should be just a matter of flipping something over.
Well-
Those little parts that you're identifying, or they could basically, what I'm hearing could basically shut us down.
Well,
We have a
I've
problem.
worked in many plants also too, and I've seen a lot of times when that couldn't happen either, unfortunately. It all boils down to budget. Doug?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Victor, for a good report. First of all, water and sewer are primary responsibilities of any municipal government, and responsible management of those systems is paramount. I don't see a lot of sense in discussing what seems to be the obvious thing. I think Bill's quite right. We need redundancy, and most of these items are about redundancy, which is really good. And I'm particularly concerned by this idea of huge lag times to get in parts that may or may not be forthcoming. I did manage to squeak in a year up in Fort Albany, one of those indigenous settlements without a reliable water system that I hope is being fixed up there for them too. But we lived for a year using distillers in place of regular tap water. Every Saturday you could go to the public school and get a couple of jugs full of water. But it was a very disturbing and very difficult kind of an existence, and I would not wish it on anyone. So I'm thinking anything we can do that will maintain the system in a proper and good way is well worth doing, and it keeps us in compliance with what the ministry would like. With respect to the berm repairs, I note that Story Environmental, in a reply to the ministry on looking at those, had asked time to study whether or not berm repairs would harm rather than help the overall workings in the Bay Area. I'm just thinking perhaps we should maybe get a comment from Story Environmental on where that's going as well before we look too hard at that one, or perhaps Victor could respond to it too. But nonetheless, I'm very strongly in favor of these recommendations and see what we can do with the budget to begin implementing.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions for Victor? Go ahead,
Through your worship, thank you for the report, Victor. And to echo Councillor Wilcox's statement, sewer and water are integral to the health of any municipality and shouldn't be taken lightly. Not to say that anyone here is, but this is definitely something that needs to be top of mind when we go through our next budget. And just the quick math on this, it looks like roughly about $280,000 worth of critical repair needed, $180,000 without berm, which through the budgetary process should be able to take a good long look at, right? So again, I thank you for that. Councilor Danny's brought up very good points about redundancy, but a lot of what you're saying here with regards to the critical components just builds in that redundancy. So it's all coming together. We're all saying the same thing, and it's all something that we need to work together towards, getting back on track. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Doug.
Just wondering, in our budget, we have lots of money set aside for water and for sewer. I'm just wondering if those monies might be available for some of these projects if we're unable to get a goodly amount of funding from the government.
We'll have to have our staff look at that, guaranteed. I do believe that there is money under, which the two grants we do get that can be used for water and sewer anyways. So I'm sure that we could find, we'll have to find some anyways.
Thank you.
Make it work. Okay, anything else? Well, thanks a lot, Victor, very thorough. A bit of an eye opener, but it's necessary. We're going to continue making water. Go ahead.
I just have one more question, Your Worship. Maybe Victor can expand on it. The flow meter was a provincial officer's order. Is that the one that's under appeal?
Flow meter is the one at the end, I believe, at the weir, right?
So, the effluent flow meter, which is a rectangular weir, that's the one that's part of not only the director's order that was given to install it in 2008. It's part of the operations as well. And the problem with it is the accuracy of that weir. And that's been under scrutiny since 2008 on the accuracy of the weir. Because with the accuracy of the weir, what the loadings are going to your receiving stream, that's what's in question right now. So Maria has been working on that for quite a few years now to try to figure out why we have such a larger volume of water going to the receiving stream as opposed to what's coming into the system. So there's a huge discrepancy there. So that weir is part of what we've been telling the ministry for these many years, that we have putting a plan together to do this by this date. And under that provincial officer's order, it's identified that said you do it. You said you do it. That sort of pinnacle now with the provincial officer's order. There's hard deadlines in that provincial officer's order to plan it together and by this date have it installed. So outside the stay that you're in right now, because the appeal put it into a stay, we're waiting for the approval branch to say, hear you, this is what we're going to do, or heard you, and so that's the one that's under appeal.
Yeah, that's the one that's under appeal, guaranteed. And I was down there 2 weeks ago when you guys were down there, and the way they were doing the testing to check the accuracy, that thing was totally insane. Guy gets down in the pit with a cooler and measures the water flow. It definitely has to be done, guaranteed. It's been ignored for too long, and that's the problem now. It's housekeeping that we inherited, fortunately. And now it's time to get it done. Okay, well, thank you so much, Victor. Nobody else has anything else? Thank you so much. And our budget process is coming up, so keep this in mind, folks. It all has to be looked at carefully. Very good presentation, Victor. Thank you. Okay, items for council information. 10.6, Phenom. Notice of Northern Ontario Resource Development Support Fund. Cobalt has access to $73,013 annually for 5 years for expenses that are related to road maintenance and construction. We could badly use it all, no doubt. Okay. DSAB 2021 Q3 K-Black COA report to DSAB board. Take the time to read this. It's a little very interesting. I'm going to draw your attention to page 12. One little notice item that I picked up on was the little pie chart that's hard to see because of the coloring, but it shows that there is a little bit of a demand for senior housing between 2020 and 2021, the 106 to 155. So that should add a little bit to our argument that we're trying to get across with the DSAB. Any other comments on the report that anybody's seen or would like to discuss? Nothing, okay. Be it resolved that council accept the items as presented. A mover and a seconder. Matt and Bill. All in favor? Carried. Other business. 2022 budget, council goals and priorities for discussion. Okay, we're going to be beginning the budget process very shortly. Anyone has anything they would like to discuss in the budget process, make sure you get a hold of staff. Don't tell me in a passing note that that's what you want to discuss, because I will forget it. Do your homework, put it in writing, send it to the office, and we will definitely look at it, okay? That's about all I have to say on that. And of course, Dave will have his stuff to put in on that too. 11.2 draft policy, town of Cobalt video surveillance policy. Everybody had a chance to look at it? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. 11.3 town of Cobalt vaccination policy will be formalized with a bylaw at the next regular meeting. Comments? Go ahead, Pat.
I was just wondering, for the testing, like weekly testing or whatever that might be needed for a non-vaccinated employee, who pays for the test kits? Has that been established yet?
Councillor Anderson, town of Cobalt will be paying for that test.
Okay. Doug, did you have a question? Or, okay, Doug and Angela?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Hey, good, I am alive. Okay.
Yeah.
Since this policy was proposed, there have been some significant changes with respect to both the pandemic we're living in and the various kinds of reactions to it. For instance, the Canadian health doctor has stated that the COVID virus is now aerosolized, which means if an infected person is in a room and they leave the room and you walk into the room and go through their space, you can still pick up the virus. You don't have to worry about this. Although the 6-foot distancing helps, it is no longer a guarantee. That's also confirmed by the Ontario Medical Chief of Doctors too. The advent of Omicron variant is creating an atmosphere now where they are forecasting some possibility of hospitals being overly taxed in Ontario over the next few months. So the whole thing seems to have become quite serious again. I think previously when we were looking at this, we were living in a time when Temiskaming was relatively untouched by the pandemic. Now, obviously, that has changed rather significantly. And the fourth wave seems to be gaining steam pretty much everywhere in the world, and certainly also within Canada. So I'm wondering if council would entertain changing the way we've approached this to having a vaccination requirement for all staff. I would open that to discussion.
Oh. I guess nobody has any comments on that. It's something we'll have to discuss. We'll think about Doug and discuss that at the next meeting, I would guess. Since nobody wants to make any comments on it right now, but you are right. It's changing at such a rapid rate that it's impossible to keep up to it. Angela, you had something to add?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows, but what is the cost for the testing that the town would have to foot the bill for per test?
Yeah, go ahead.
At this time, Councillor Ad said what we can do is get some costs and present it to the council.
Yeah.
Because the
Please.
costs right now are fluctuating with the demand of the product as well and the availability.
Okay.
We will look at the policy then and circulate it before we go any further. Is that good, Doug? Is that satisfactory?
Yes, it certainly bears further investigation,
Yeah.
as does the rest of the situation we're in. You know, our hospital is
Yeah.
closed to visitors. all kinds of things are happening that aren't good. And it comes down to safety being paramount, both for our employees and for our public. So,
Absolutely, I agree.
John?
Yeah.
You know, I've been with Doug all along on this, that we should all be protected.
Mhm.
I think when we first started discussing that, that was what I had proposed as well.
Absolutely.
It gets scary.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try and keep ahead of it and do the best we can and keep our people safe. Best we can do at this point in time. It changes so drastically, it's unbelievable. Okay. Item 11 or item 12, closed session. We have none. No business arising. Confirmation bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-39 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the town of Cobalt be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed the 7th day of December 2021. And further, said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and recorded in the bylaw book. Mover and a seconder, please. Angela and Pat, all in favor? Thank you. 15, adjournment. Be it resolved that committee of the whole meeting of council be adjourned at 7:31. A mover and a seconder, Matt and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, folks, for coming out.